Christian pastorship implies a peculiar type of knowledge between the pastor and his sheep. The knowledge is particular, is individualistic. It individualizes. It isn't enough to know the state of the flock, that each sheep must be known. The theme existed long before there was Christian pastorship, but it was considerably amplified in three different ways. The shepherd must be informed as to the material needs of each member of the flock and provide for them when necessary. He must know what is going on, what each of them does, his public sins. Last but not least, he must know what goes on in the soul of each one, that is, his secret sins, his progress on the road to sanctity. In order to ensure this individual knowledge, Christianity appropriated two essential instruments at work in the Hellenistic world: self-examination and the guidance of conscience. It took them over, but not without altering them considerably. It is well known that self-examination was widespread among the Pythagoreans, the Stoics, and the Epicureans, as a means of daily taking stock of the good or evil performed in regard to one's duties. One's progress on the way to perfection, that is, self-mastery, and the domination of one's passions could thus be measured. The guidance of conscience was also predominant in certain cultured circles, but as advice given, and sometimes paid for, in particularly difficult circumstances, in mourning or when one was suffering a setback. Christian pastorship closely associated these two practices. On the one hand, conscience guiding constituted a constant bind. The sheep didn't let itself be led, only to come through any rough passage victoriously, let itself be led every second. Being guided was a state, and you were fatally lost if you tried to escape it. The ever-quoted phrase runs like this: "He who suffers not guidance withers away like a dead leaf." As for self-examination, its aim was not to close self-awareness in upon itself, but rather to enable it to open up entirely to its director, to unveil to him the depths of the soul. There are a great many first-century ascetic and monastic texts concerning the link between guidance and self-examination, which show how critical these techniques were for Christianity and how complex they had already become. What I would like to emphasize is that they delineate the emergence of a very strange phenomenon in Greco-Roman civilization. That is, the organization of a link between total obedience, knowledge of oneself, and confession to someone else. There is another transformation, maybe the most important. All those Christian techniques of examination, confession, guidance, obedience have an aim: to get individuals to work at their own mortification in this world. Mortification is not death, of course, but it is a renunciation of this world and of oneself, a kind of everyday death, a death that is supposed to provide life in another world. This is not the first time that we see the shepherd theme associated with death, but here it is different than in the Greek idea of political power. It is not a sacrifice for the city. Christian mortification is a kind of relation of oneself to oneself. It is a constitutive part of Christian self-identity. We can say, then, that Christian pastorship has introduced a game that neither the Greeks nor the Hebrews imagined. It is a strange game whose elements are life, death, truth, obedience, individuals, self-identity, a game that seems to have nothing to do with the game of the city surviving through the sacrifice of the citizens. Our societies prove to be really demonic since they happen to combine those two games, the city-citizen game and the shepherd-flock game, in what we call the modern states. And as you may notice, what I have been trying to do this evening is not to solve a problem, but to suggest a way to approach a problem. This problem is similar to those I have been working on since my first book about insanity and mental illness. As I told you previously, this problem deals with the relations between experiences, like madness, illness, transgression of laws, sexuality, self-identity, knowledge like psychiatry, medicine, criminology, sexology, psychology, and power, such as the power wielded in psychiatric and penal institutions and in all other institutions that deal with individual control. Our civilization has developed the most complex system of knowledge, the most sophisticated structures of power. What has this kind of knowledge, this type of power, made of us? In what way are those fundamental experiences of madness, suffering, death, crime, desire, individuality connected, even if we are not aware of it, with knowledge and power? Am I sure I'll ever get to the answer, but that does not mean that we do not have to ask the question.